Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, Rabbit Hole, Lore and Friend, the upcoming Jaw of the Dragons. We're approaching the Game Awards season. We are getting to the point where Jeff Keighley is on Twitter, like teasing the Game of the Year 2022. I'm sure it's already been decided by like the committee, and they're just kind of like getting ready to like fire up their like advertising and like get us all ready to like for another great showing of Jeff Keighley telling us all how like Nintendo didn't deserve to win any awards that year. It's the same thing over and over again. And I think it's starting to become like well known to the public, but I really have to reiterate myself. I'm going to keep telling this like saying this every year until the Game Awards goes away, which I think is inevitable at this point. I don't think anybody is really watching it for the trailers. The Game Award, I don't think anyone is watching the Game Awards for anything other than the trailers for upcoming releases. Nobody takes their committee seriously. Nobody takes the award seriously. And all you have to do is just go down the list of games they've been giving the Game of the Year award to since 2014. There's stuff like Dragon Quest Inquisition. There's stuff like The Last of Us Part 2. There's stuff like Overwatch, which you can't even play anymore, technically. And you have like It Takes Two last year, which was like a game so terrible that I myself can't even be bothered to play it now that it's released on Switch. Like that's how uninterested I was in It Takes Two. Like being playing a game where like you're a divorced cuck, like trying to win back your wife might appeal to like game journalists and like soy boy beta cucks, but like I prefer games like Bayonetta 3. I prefer like actual love stories, you know? Like I prefer like based in red pill things. Like the divorce is never based, okay? I don't care what anyone says. There is no reason ever to get a divorce. So, I the Game Awards, I think, is quickly getting a reputation, has had a reputation since its very inception of being this extremely corrupt, organization that exists to like really prop up the Western video game world and pretend it's way better received than it actually is. It is essentially a dick sucking competition, a dick sucking award show for the Western video game industry. All right. It is essentially a way for them to pretend that their games are well received and popular, sort of like the game equivalent of the Oscars, right? And it really is like the game equivalent of the Oscars in that like nobody watches it or respects the games that get awards. It's just like an excuse for the industry to kind of pretend that everything is great and they're really innovating and doing new and interesting things with their products. And I think one of the problems with this, especially if you're a fan of Japanese games, Japanese media like I am, um, you'll notice very quickly, even casual viewers will notice this, is that like Japanese games, which are generally among audiences that actually play a lot of games and actually know what they're talking about are seen as being the superior alternative to Western shit. You know, when you compare Zelda to The Witcher 3, you really get a sense of just how much, the world is bigger, the gameplay is better. Like like there is no justification that The Witcher 3 is better unless you're a blind fanboy of that franchise. You can't even really say the writing and story is better because it isn't. The gaming industry kind of relies on this like illusion that what they're doing is like cutting edge in the top of their field, but it really isn't true. It never has been true. Like Japanese games, even in like the dark ages from 2007 to 2013, like even back then they were putting out like absolute bangers that went ignored by the Western video game industry and were downplayed by shows like the Game Awards. This has been a reoccurring problem for years, and it's a big reoccurring problem with game journalism. Is that like the legitimately good stuff that deserves to get attention, stuff like Legends Arceus, Pokemon Legends Arceus, stuff like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, stuff like what else came out this year? 13 Sentinels, I think, is a game that really deserved awards. I'm sure it didn't get anything. There are like all these games this year that I think are like stand heads and shoulders above games that came out on like other platforms this year that are gonna win like entire categories, right? That are gonna like sweep the game show, right? Like people like how many game journalists have tried to tell you that like Elden Ring has like one of the best open worlds ever? that no open world game can even compete when that's really not the case. Like Zelda did it first and did it better. How many people are like, we're going into this award season right now. I believe God of War Ragnarok isn't even out yet. I think it might have just come out actually this week. I don't pay attention to this stuff. God of War Ragnarok, before the game even came out, game journalists were telling us that it was like a shoe in for game of the year. Not because like it stood out or it was interesting or it was particularly good, but because it was a big high profile release from Sony, the title they wanted to push this year. Right? That's how I see it. That's how I see like the Game Awards is that like they are essentially a way for you they are essentially an excuse to like talk about certain developers and certain companies in order to hype them up to like an unsuspecting public who don't understand that these companies are putting out like poor products that honestly don't even deserve to be talked about, right? This has gone past like the point of like my favorite games like not even being nominated for categories that they should win, right? We're seeing like entire categories filled to the brim with like games that like nobody actually cares about. A Control is probably a good example. Uh, It Takes Two, I think, was a good example. The Last of Us Part 2 is probably like always going to be like the definitive example of like the industry doing everything it possibly can to like make this poorly received product a success. Like this has been like this is the Game Awards. This isn't a reoccurring thing. This isn't a pattern. This is what the Game Awards fundamentally is. It is a way for gaming journalists to force you to talk about games that nobody actually cares about.